We are back. Time to jump into some Week 10 matchups. Obviously, the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Today, I'm not alone, of course. It is a Wednesday, so we're going to walk through some of the top matchups, of course. He is a weekly guest on the Joe Holka Show, author of The Worksheet. Obviously, you know him from sharpfootballanalysis.com. Rich Hribar with a brand new camera, lighting setup, whatever it is. It looks amazing. How are you, man? How was your Week 9?
Oh man, week 9 was great. Definitely made up for, I've had 2 bad weeks. Week 8 was bad, and then week 9 we came back. And I think it was hard to mess up. You always say that when you win. Oh, it was hard to mess up last week. But I mean, Dalvin Cook and Josh Allen carried so much heavy lifting, that it was hard to put bad guys around them. They scored so many points. So we'll take that. I mean, it's an interesting week this week with the way the running back position is laid out. We're running out of these alpha guys in the main slate every week. It's kind of just us gravitating to one player every week because we don't have multiple options. We get Christian McCaffrey back and he's gone. Dalvin Cook's on fire. He goes to Monday night. Zeke hasn't been any good. He's on bye. We've got Alvin Kamara, and then where else do you want to spend it at running back?
It's a problem that we didn't really have as much of at times of this year and definitely last year. So we'll get there, man. I like our new format to kind of what we're doing here. We're going through the 3 most interesting games of the week from a fantasy perspective that kind of set up for a lot of points. As we speak, I'm getting these weird black airs on Streamlabs. So in the chat, let me know if you're seeing anything weird. Looks like the sound is good, so that's the important thing. So our first game, Reeves. Buffalo at Arizona. It's a 56-point over-under. The Cardinals are a 2-point home favorite per blitzbet.eu. Cardinals games obviously are averaging the 4th most combined plays. They're playing at a very fast neutral pace overall. Their games 4th most total points over the past month as well. So what do you think about this game overall? I think a lot of people are going to start here with these 2 elite quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, everyone looks at Arizona for the pace of play, and we've seen it again last week. And when they have someone that can score with them, their games definitely go back and forth. And then we've got the top 2 quarterbacks, the first quarterback and the 4th quarterback, and points per drop back involved in this game. So if we're going to get a bunch of plays and a bunch of drop backs, I mean, both those quarterbacks stand out. Josh Allen got off the schneid in a spot that we thought he would take advantage of, and he's in another pretty good spot too. It's interesting, Arizona is kind of in a spot where you look at their overall production and it doesn't really scream like play quarterbacks against them. But then when you go into the hood and you realize that half the quarterbacks they faced have been Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, Dwayne Haskins. You go and look at Jimmy Garoppolo, and then you realize they've allowed 18, 19 fantasy points or more to all those quarterbacks outside of those guys. You say, yeah, this matchup isn't as hard as it looks, especially if we're going to get a lot of plays. Talk about touchdown equity. I mean, you're not getting more than you are from Josh Allen at the quarterback position. I mean, he's accounted for 86% of the Buffalo offensive touchdowns, most in the league. So, I mean, we can always play Josh Allen. The great thing about Josh Allen is you don't have to play him with other players, but he offers a lot of players this year to play him with. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, already through 9 games, Stephon Diggs has as many receptions as he had all of last year with the Minnesota Vikings. He has just 3 fewer targets than he had all of last year as well, just through 9 games with the Bills. Arizona's 23rd in points allowed per game to opposing wide receiver ones. John Brown in a John Brown revenge game, a smoke revenge game. He came back at 11 targets last week in a spot. We loved him. And, he was cheaper than Cole Beasley last week. In Arizona, outside of Patrick Peterson now, Drake Kirkpatrick, he sat out last week with a thigh injury, so we got to monitor his practice, this week. His backup, Kevin Peterson, left last week's game with a concussion, so he's in concussion protocol. So Arizona might be limping in with some, with some secondary, kind of vulnerability in this game. So we've got some options to play with him. We're not, really too keen on playing Zach Moss or any of those Buffalo backs. And on the other side, Kyler Murray through 8 games has the most fantasy points for any quarterback through 8 games in NFL history. Russell Wilson this year is number 2. So we've got 2 guys kind of on a record-setting pace at the quarterback position after we had a record-setting pace from Lamar Jackson year 4 and Patrick Mahomes. So, I mean, QB points, we're running into some record-breaking quarterbacks. If you want to get one of these guys that can pass and run, and that's what Kyler's doing. He's got 8 rushing touchdowns. Only 2 players ran for 100 yards last week, Dalvin Cook and Kyler Murray. So you're getting a little bit of bonus opportunity, over on a site like DraftKings with Kyler too with his legs. It looks like Kenyon Drake did practice today, so we have to kind of monitor that situation and see if we'll get another week of Chase Edmonds or it'll be a combo backfield. And then, we already know DeAndre Hopkins, what we can do with him. Tre'Davious White had an ankle injury at the end of last week's game. We monitor his practice habits. Obviously, if he doesn't play, that's a big, big plus. for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. Then Christian Kirk's kind of come alive here. He's been a top 30 scoring wideout in each of his past 4 games. He's had 7 targets or more in 3 of his past 4 games. Last week, he had a 31% target share as his highest in a game this season. And he leads the Arizona Cardinals in deep targets, and Buffalo is 30th in completion rate allowed on deep throws in the NFL. So, I mean, this game has a lot of potential fireworks. 2 good quarterback plays, which we always like. And I think, like you said, this will be a game that people kind of get to first and figure out where they want to stack and game block from first.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, Reeves. This is definitely a decent matchup to go deep. One of the things about Nuke, like obviously 7,700, I was kind of excited to go back there just because he kind of has a dud last week where people are trying to at least late swap into that type of upside with Nuke. His volume's tailed off a little bit. You mentioned Christian Kirk, like since he came back since week 4, like Nuke has definitely not been seeing like this crazy amount of volume. One thing like that we've been praising Kyler obviously for what he's been doing on the ground and all of the things that he's been doing through the air probably don't get enough attention. He did a pretty good job last week, I think, at like kind of giving or kind of taking what the defense was giving him, which meant if Nuke wasn't open, he gets through to the open guy, and that's definitely some progression we've seen for Kyler. Not as great, I guess, and sometimes I guess fantasy would love it, just keep forcing it to Nuke and that sort of thing. But I do have some concerns overall. I was hoping to go back to Chase Edmonds. If people were upset with him, the volume was still there. 96% of the snaps last week, ran a route on 75% of the dropbacks, 25 rush attempts. I get it, only 3 targets, but the volume was there, and that's all we care about. So he's still very, very cheap. So hopefully they sit out Drake one more game. That'd be nice to get access to him one more time. But awesome game overall. Let's move on to this second one, Reeves. It is Seattle at the LA Rams, 55.5 point over under. The Rams are 2-point home favorites per blitzbet.eu. This Rams team, like routinely, it feels like, has kind of given the Seahawks a little bit of trouble over the last couple of years. So the Seahawks, this team has dropped 2 of their last 3 overall. This defense is allowing the league's most plays by far against them right now. So obviously a great fantasy game, but I guess it's kind of interesting just how much the Rams have had this team's number over the years. So what are your thoughts on this one overall?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We somehow always get to the Seahawks because their games just keep going bonkers, man. I mean, their games have averaged a combined 64.6 points scored. It's by far the most in the league. These teams are not, it's not normal that these teams play in shootouts too. The 3 of the past 4 games that they played have scored 59 combined points or more as well. So these teams do go back and forth. They're familiar with each other. It's interesting about this matchup is that the Rams defense has been the best defense as far as not giving up plays vertically downfield and splash plays. They're allowing a league low 2.1 plays per game with 20 or more yards. They're allowing just a 28% completion rate on throws 15 yards or further downfield. They are the only team in the NFL that hasn't allowed a touchdown pass on a throw 15 yards or further downfield, and they're facing a quarterback that leads the NFL in touchdown passes on those throws. One thing about the Rams, though, is that they're another one of these teams, when you go under the hood, outside of facing Josh Allen, who carved them up pretty badly, and Dak Prescott in week 1, who's a good quarterback, they faced Carson Wentz, Daniel Jones, Alex Smith and Kyle Allen, hodgepodge in the rain, Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Foles, Tua in his first career start where he didn't have to do anything because the defense scored a bunch of points. So, I mean, the Rams are going to be tested for really arguably the first time, second time, if you count Josh Allen this season. With Russell Wilson, and Russell kind of didn't get there last week for everyone, but even with 4 turnovers, he had over 20 fantasy points, threw for 390 yards, almost 10 yards per pass attempt. I mean, it's just a blitzkrieg he's putting on this season, and they can't slow down and they can't prevent Russ from cooking because their defense can't stop anybody. So, I mean, and this running back situation is still kind of unsettled. We don't know if Chris Carson's going to play. We don't know if Carlos Hyde's going to play. Rashad Penny's still not back yet. So, I mean, it could be a situation where they just have to keep leaning on the passing game, which we love. And what that does open up is on the other side now is that it makes this Rams passing game a lot more appealing when they've kind of meandered through games. They've kind of hit Jared Goff a lot. Their pace of play and situational, neutral pass rate has gone up lately. It started the year where they were just very run heavy neutral game script. It has started to go up a little bit, and we're going to need it to because, in this game, we talk about Seattle every week. I mean, They are allowing 47 dropbacks per game to opposing quarterbacks. They're allowing 21 passing points per game. It's just the situation that has come through for us every single week, unless you play Jimmy Garoppolo the first 3 quarters of that game. And Nick Mullins still kind of got there at the end. Unfortunately, we don't get transitive property. But you look at these wide receivers, we finally have a week where like we're not getting a bunch of expensive wide receivers or top-notch receivers against them. I mean, John Brown wasn't expensive, but Diggs obviously is a wide receiver one. We've got Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, who outside of last week, so the week before the bye, where Cooper Kupp got 20 targets, they were basically 1A, 1B. Like they were just similar air yards, similar targets. Until that game kind of threw some things out of whack in terms of target potential. But Bob Woods is scoring touchdowns this year. He's got one touchdown fewer than setting a career high already. We're not, just 8 games into the season for him.
Wow.
So Bob is coming. We always like Bob for the floor, but now he's scoring touchdowns. We got receivers have just not let us down against Seattle. They haven't stopped anyone. Cooper Kupp did pick up a wrist injury in that Dolphins game, and I haven't heard anything about it or severity. Maybe it's a no news is good news situation. But this is a situation we definitely want to target those receivers. And if you're looking for a deep dig, Josh Reynolds has run a pass route on 84% of the team dropbacks the 3 games prior to the bye. He's been a top 48 scorer in all 3 of those weeks, and he leads the Rams in end zone targets on the season. If you're looking to get another like passing piece of this game.
Yeah, don't tease me with Cooper Kupp. I am a sucker for this guy overall, and I think it's just like I don't know what it is about him. I just always play him when he's in these type of spots. The chemistry that he's shown with Goff over the years is something that we've been targeting for sure. 6,900, I could see him being pretty popular. He might end up even facing the number 3 slot cornerback for the Seahawks because of so many injuries they have and how bad this defense has been overall. Great spot, obviously, to go to those guys. I like the Reynolds call as well. Reeves, let's get into this last game. I know we're running out of time here. So Houston at Cleveland, 53-point over under. Obviously, the Lions are the Texans are a 3-point home underdog here. So perplitsbet.eu. What are your thoughts on this game overall?
Yeah, when you talk about matchups, I mean, this one just screams because, well, one, we've got 2 defenses that are deplorable. They're in the bottom 8 of points allowed per game. Cleveland's allowing a league high 13.5 red zone plays per game. Houston is 31st, right behind them. So lots of scoring opportunities should be had in this game. And from the Cleveland side, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry here. The Browns lead the league in percentage of rushing plays that gain 10 or more yards. And explosive runs per game at 5.4. Houston's allowing a league high 4.6 explosive runs per game. The Browns run the ball on 62% of their first down plays outside of the fourth quarter. That's second in the league behind the Tennessee Titans. Houston is allowing 5.8 yards per carry and first down runs, by far the most in the league. And then on the flip side, Houston is kind of a one-dimensional offense. 76% of their offensive production comes from via passing. So we've got a pretty natural game stack here. Play Browns rushers with Nick Chubb coming back if you want to get with Kareem Hunt, and you can run it back with the Houston passing side, and it's kind of a nice fit. Now, we also have some cheap pieces in this game that kind of stand out. It looks like David Johnson, their quote was his status is up in the air for this week after being in concussion protocol. So we might get a Duke Johnson revenge game. He had 20 touches. We've all kind of been wanting just one opportunity for Duke Johnson, just one time where the coaching staff has to go all in with him. So we can get 20 touches again where he's priced. He's going to be kind of tough to get away from. And then the Cleveland defense has allowed 143 yards from scrimmage per game over their past 3 games to opposing backfields after 112.6 per game over their opening 5 games. So they've been a little more vulnerable. One thing to highlight too is because we had a bye and they played in that like crazy wind game against the Raiders, which we kind of talked about at that show during this week, is that prior to the bye, Jarvis Landry had 44% of the team targets in the first game the Browns played without Odell Beckham. Now, he did turn those 11 targets just into 4 catches, but he dropped a touchdown and 2 other long play drops. I mean, he is really cheap on both sides. And if you're just going to push like a 30, 40% target share, he's one guy that you want to keep your pulse on against the team of Bradley Roby still injured and have some scoring potential. They've had a bunch of issues in the back end as well. I know a lot of people are going to be looking to go back to Rashard Higgins. He's cheap as well, but I mean, 44% of the team targets in his last game played. Something just to keep an eye on here as you start to make lineups and get exposure to guys. Don't ignore Jarvis Landry.
That's a perfect segue, Reeves, because actually Harmon wants to talk about Higgins. I'm not sure if it's because he's super bullish on Higgins or if he thinks that Landry is someone that's going a little bit overvalued. So that's going to be nice. Anyone that's watching this later, be sure and check out the wide receiver sleeper video as well. I'm with you on Deshaun Watson, man. It was one of the price tags I looked at earlier this week, and I was like, wow, 6,900 still in this spot. And this is still a team that throws a lot at the goal line as well. 68% of their passes kind of in the red zone, or sorry, of their plays in the red zone are pass attempts. So that's one of those ones I think is still really valuable. Those are three really solid games, Reeves. Definitely ones that are very stackable in tournaments this week. But let the people know where else they can find you throughout the week, and I'll get you out of here, man. Good show.
Yeah, Sharp Football Analysis. So you find a worksheet to break down all these games and the players in these games, all kinds of fun nuggets. Pre-Snap Motion Podcast, the fantasy podcast I do at Chad Scott. Sharp Angles is more of a betting real football show I do with Cleve TA and Dan Pizzuta. And you guys know 3:15 every Wednesday, the Joel Hoka Show, breaking down some of these games.
Awesome, man. Be sure and follow Reeves on Twitter at Lord Reeves. I'll see you next week, man. Have a great week 10.
Yeah, you guys too. Good luck.
Yeah.